What's going on, guys? Matt at Middleton Motorsports here. Another episode of Behind the Tune. Up on the dyno today, we have a Shelby GT500 2012. So this car is actually owned by a really good friend of mine. He works here at the dealership also. He's a tech here. And he's had this car for maybe a couple years now. And he's been slowly adding mods to it. And he's gotten to the point where you know, we've been doing some street tuning on it, and I've been helping him out with it, obviously. And we're to the point now where we really needed to get it up on the dyno. We did a bigger fuel system on it just recently, so bigger pumps, bigger feed line, and those just supply bigger injectors just to supply fuel for. So he's got this VMP 2650 on it. So it's the Gen 3 VMP 2650. He's got the twin, I think that's the twin 67 throttle body, JLT intake. He's got headers on it, long tube headers. Running a 2.6 pulley, so we're just touching over 20 pounds, 21. If you really take it out to like 6,700, we're maybe touching 22 pounds, but that's just at the very end where the boost is kind of taking off on us a little bit. Obviously we're hitting an airflow limitation on it up near the top end. But yeah, so it's a pretty stout little combination for one of these engines. So these engines are mod motor base, so this is still the 4654 base motor. This is a modular engine, so this is a 5.4 liter, obviously being a 2012 aluminum block. And yeah, these were still pretty badass engines. They low compression engines, small camshafts, but you do a couple things to them and you were still making some decent power. We are on E85, so this car started, he bought it with a cold air on it and suspension mods. So this car's got coilovers on it, some suspension stuff. He bought it that way, and the power just wasn't there for him. He's got a turbo LS deal, and he's had all sorts of other fast cars throughout his life. So, but this is just kind of a fun street cruiser, do some street Mexico type of stuff, you know, with it. Stick shift car, you know, he likes having a stick shift car for, you know, I'm kind of the same way. I really enjoy stick shift cars, but the stock power, bolt-on power was kind of underwhelming from what he was used to, so he's been kind of chipping away at mods. And we were to the point on the ethanol. I did do a flex fuel tune on this, and we were kind of to the point on it where he's like, you know what, let's just put it on a straight ethanol tune. We get about 75% ethanol around here, so that's what we're tuning on today, is just straight ethanol. And he didn't want to mess around with the flex fuel anymore. He's like, screw it, I'm just going to go straight ethanol. So but he was running out of fuel with the 2.6 pulley, and he did have 775 injectors in it when he did the blower. We had now upgraded to 1000 cc FIC, fuel injector clinic injectors. So he was running out of fuel. Pump wise, he just had a VMP pump booster on it with the 2.6 pulley on full ethanol. We were running out of fuel. Fuel pressure was dropping. So we did this fuel pump upgrade, added a larger Dash 8 hose up to the fuel rail, and we are now good on fuel. The injectors were nearing their limit, but we were still hitting the pump limit first, so he thought, let's just do the injectors also. So we did thousands and the twin Deatschwerks 340 fuel pumps in the stock hanger in the tank. So all that stuff combined, this is where we're at so far. I think this is about where we're going to be. Been playing with the timing. Like I said, we had done some street tuning on this car, and I kind of had an idea on the timing. I haven't done a ton of these 07 to 14 GT500s. I've done a couple of them, several here and there. Definitely not my bread and butter. So I was kind of, with what he had done here with where the boost was at and what kind of load I was seeing in the tune, I kind of guessed on the timing, and I was pretty much right on. I was maybe a degree conservative, but this is kind of where we're at. So red line, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a tail. That's right where we were touching the limiter, and it was kind of, the dyno will kind of sometimes give you a little bit of a false reading up here if you're on the sample button, the brake button to stop the sampling, and just touching the rev limiter, sometimes it'll give you this little blip at the top. So that's kind of not really relevant. We won't really pay attention to that 773. It's been making 765 to 769. I think it was our highest pull. I've just been kind of playing with the timing up and down the last 3 runs. The fueling was pretty much spot on. Fuel injector clinics, they have pretty good data, so I put that data in, and we were within 5%. I had to pull just a smidge out. I set the stoic. We can go through this on the tune. I did set the stoic for about 75% ethanol. We don't see 85% ethanol where we're at here in southern Wisconsin. We usually don't even see 80%. Typically, it's the highest we'll see is like 78. So he lives south of here, about a half an hour. So he has E85 local to him, and the E85 that's near our shop here, our dealership, is the same type of gas station, same brand gas station, so they all carry the same type of E85, and that's where most of the guys go around here. So typically it's about 75% in the summer. It's about as much as you're going to see. So this is where we're at. I'm going to do, the car's been cooling off. We were just kind of trying to see if we could get a solid 770 run out of it, but you know, just for fun. Again, he's a good buddy of mine, so we were kind of playing around with it a little bit. But this is looking pretty good. I'm happy with this for you know, being a completely stock engine. Obviously it does have a blower swap, but these engines, these 12s, came with the old style Eaton M122, very hot running supercharger, very small little intercooler brick in them. Yeah, big IATs on, you know, on big pulls, you know, second 2, 3, 4 gear pulls. This VMP blower is way worlds better, obviously way more efficient. He picked up quite a bit of power just switching the blower, quite a bit of power. So now we're just kind of fine tuning it. We got the fueling dialed in now, and he's able to run that 2.6 pulley. I don't know that we're going to go any smaller on the pulley. These engines aren't like the 2020 and up GT500s that can just go 1,000, 1,100 wheel, no problem. They have a little bit of a limit on the rod bolts. Big stroke in these engines. That 5.4 liter has a really long stroke, and piston speeds get pretty high, and rod speeds and stuff like that get pretty high, and the components can only take so much. So, but we were just looking at the graph before I started the video up here, and he's super happy with where we're at compared to some of the other stuff he's seen and been talking to guys about. So I'm going to set the camera down. We're going to do one more pull. We'll go over the data log. I'll kind of go over the PCMs, and these things are similar to the early style Coyotes, but obviously these don't have variable cam timing, so you're not really messing around with map points or anything. So we're going to do one more pull, and we'll look at some final numbers, and we'll look at a data log, and we'll wrap this one up. Still looking pretty nice. Me and Ty, the owner of the car, were just looking at some more of the dyno graphs, so I took that 773 away with that little tail on it and put up two of the other previous pulls that were a little bit more realistic with, you know, where we finished up here. So green pull was the one you just watched. So you can see right over to the top of the very last pull. Intake air temps have all been about the same for all these pulls. I'm starting at around 118-ish and ending at 120 for the blower temperature. So yeah, 768 on that last pull there, 718 torque. Nice fat curve. These so these 2650s are kind of like a twin screw blower in the sense of the boost curve. Where this is pulleyed now, we're obviously still anywhere in the curve we're making more boost than stock. But the nature of the curve is going to be a little bit more linear. I've talked about that before on the channel, where we're starting out with a little bit less boost, and the boost is definitely ramping up. The gauges on these Shelbys, on this generation Shelby, doesn't read actual boost. It reads an inferred boost based on actually the EGR differential pressure, and it's kind of a guessed estimated boost. But we've hooked an actual physical boost gauge to this car, and we are seeing, like right at the tippy top up here, we are seeing over 20, like 21 pounds. But it's, for the most part, it's kind of ramping from 18-ish down here up to 20. It's just at the last maybe 400 RPM, we're getting a little bit of a, if you were to have boost up on this graph, you'd get like this upward kind of tail on the boost. That's just really where the engine is just completely running out of, you know, airflow. The cams on these 5.4s, I believe, are the same cams that were in the 0304 Cobras, which are like, the duration at 50 is like 180 something and the intake, and 190 something in the exhaust. Really, really small camshafts. And being a 5.4 liter, there's definitely going to be an airflow limit. So you can kind of see too how about 5,400, where the curve starts to kind of flatten out a little bit, even though I know the boost is continuing to climb throughout there. So we're definitely starting to hit the limit. Now, A monoblade oval throttle body on this might make a little bit more on the top end. Ty's been talking to the VMP guy about that, and he said he'd probably pick up about 30 horsepower up at the top end with a bigger monoblade. So he's considering that. But the drivability on those big monoblades can be a little hit or miss. They're kind of hard to tune, but it can be done. But he's kind of happy with the way it is right now. I mean, this is making decent power for just kind of a daily driver, fun summer cruiser. So, yeah, curve looks good. So let's take a look at the logs. So, like I said before, if I mentioned it when we were looking at the engine, these have, obviously this being a 2012, similar to Gen 1 Coyote PCM, but they don't use, obviously there's no variable cam timing, so they don't use the map point system per se. They still have it in the tune, but they don't use it. So it's kind of a hybrid. Still uses wide bands. We're still tuning with factory wide bands, which is awesome. I always love to have, vehicle with that, so we're not putting external wideband in. We can rely on it. Timing. So fueling, I was commanding about 0.8 right on the money lambda with E85 here. Like I said, this is an E85 only tune. We did have this running on a flex tune, and it worked great, but he just decided I'm not ever going to put pump gas in it, so I don't really need to mess with it. And he's got E85 local to him, and yeah, so we just did a straight E85 tune in to kind of simplify it a little bit. Timing, I did play around with the timing quite a bit on the dyno. I think I got about 10 pulls on this thing just to kind of see where it was happy. And this is where I ended up. So down in the bottom, very, very bottom, I was a little soft on it. And these PCMs, just like the more modern Coyotes, they do have basically kind of still have the HDFX where the timing will add and subtract as it sees fit, and kind of where you set that stuff. So I do have that in play. It is working, but obviously the MBT tables are still going to kind of be the cap for timing. 23 to 24 degrees is where this was the happiest. I tried pulling it down to 21, 22. We lost 8 foot-pounds, 8 horsepower. Tried 25. It didn't gain anything over 20. So it didn't really gain anything over 23. So you can see at the very tippy top, we're just touching that there. But for the most part, we're kind of just riding that kind of 23 line. That's where it was the happiest. It was picking up a little bit of power. It's between 5,500 and 6,000, having a smidge over 23, so you can see I'm a little over it there. But this is I've kind of played it with it up and down, and this is where it was making the most. Another degree of timing was from here was showing it basically 3 horsepower. It just was almost within the accuracy of the dyno, repeatability of the dyno. So I pulled it back down to where where we're at right now, and that's where I was happy. Having wide bands, obviously, I'm just looking at the fueling here. They run closed loop all the time, just like a Coyote does. And so the short-term fuel trims down here are going to kind of trim fuel throughout the wide open throttle stuff. So you can kind of see it's a little bit rich in the mid-range here, so I could maybe take a little bit out of there, but nothing too crazy. I mean, we're starting off at 2-3% there, and it is dropping throughout the mid-range, 7, 8, 7, 6, and then it kind of, so just in this kind of mid-range here, I can maybe pull a couple percent out. I like having this closed loop system always pulling just a little bit. Over time, these long terms will learn some of that. So as long as there's not big double-digit fuel trim numbers, I don't get overly concerned, because they are kind of a self-learning system. As long as you're within the ballpark, 7% is getting a little bit out of the. I like being within 5% negative, so I could maybe just pull a couple percent kind of out, in these, in the MAF frequencies, the MAF frequencies in between, kind of this mid-range here. So I think that ends up being like a period of, like 120 to 100 or something like that, just in that mid-range. But otherwise, yeah, I'm turning this thing to 6,700. That's kind of the consensus that we came up with. I think, these stock are, I think, a 64 I'd have to look at the tune. I know we had bumped it up. Stock is 6250, so I bumped it up to 67. Doing these before, and just the general consensus throughout the community on this specific engine, it's 6700 is safe. I mean, that's about the limit you're going to take it to. I know there's guys out there with record-breaking type stock bottom-end cars going 68, maybe 69, but that's starting to really lean on it. Like I said, these, for mod motors, these don't have the manly rods that like an 03 Cobra did. So they're just a forged or a powdered metal style rod that, it's a stronger rod than like a Gen 1 Coyote, but it's kind of still has a limit. So we don't lean on them too hard. And again, the 5.4s have a really big stroke in them. And there's just a limits until you go, forged or billet parts. And internally, there's limits to the RPM on those parts. So 6700 is where we're capping it. Even though we're kind of still gaining up at the top, it's just starting to flatten over at 67 or 65. But we figured that was probably a pretty safe limit to kind of maximize where he's at. So yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. Like I said, I might pull a couple degrees out of here, just in this mid-range math periods, and just kind of looking over this log with you guys here. Sometimes I do that. I'll maybe be silent for a few seconds just because I'm taking some of this in. I obviously doing this for a living, I nerd out over this stuff and want to make sure everything is right on the tune and make sure everything looks good. So the fuel system we were having, this thing, like I said, this has FIC 1000cc injectors. We were, pulse width wise, we were up 17, 18 milliseconds up at that 66. We were running the limits of them. That's because the fuel pump was the fuel pumps were just not, the stock pumps were just not keeping up. So now we have solid pressure, and you can see our commanded duty cycle is it's not even 40%, which 50% is on Fords is technically the max. So we still got some room to go there. So that'll account for, with this pulley, fully 85, and today is pretty sticky, hot and humid. It's 85 degrees, 85 degrees, and it's definitely humid. So when he gets it into some cooler fall weather, 60-degree drier air, I wanted to leave room. So that's another thing I also do that maybe I haven't talked about. When I scale, I'll go kind of rewind a little bit and talk timing again. When I scale timing tables, and that applies for even GM vehicles and Dodge vehicles, because they all use some form of load. So we'll just grab an MBT table here. So there's going to be some form of load on the x-axis here, or y-axis, sorry. And factory, if I look at the factory tune, we're scaled up to like 1.6 load. The pull we just saw there, we're seeing as high as almost 2.2. But that's hot and sticky air. Cold air, he's probably, the reason I scaled that to 2.4 on his file, on his calibration, is because in cold air, he's going to be into the 2.3s for sure. Maybe even touching 2.4. So that's something to, if you're out there tuning cars, and you're tuning in the summertime when it's hot and sticky, and you're dealing with stock ECUs like this, you're going to see, because these are calculated values based on air mass and mass. This is a mass airflow car, so just air mass. It's calculated off the air mass. Colder air has higher air mass. It's more dense and it has higher mass. So you're going to see higher loads in colder air. So I will have less timing because the cylinder pressures are higher, and I always, I'm a strong proponent of cylinder pressures to completely dictate timing. You talk brake specific or I can't think of it right now, but the brake effective mean pressure is what it is. I had to think about it for a second. When you think about pressure, cylinder pressure, the higher the cylinder pressure, typically the less timing you want. So timing table needs to reflect that. So you'd think, colder air, I can run more timing. Not necessarily, because the cylinder pressure is going to be higher, and with higher cylinder pressure, usually the boost is going to be a smidge higher, and the burn's going to be a little faster. You typically do not need as much advance on the timing. So I will always scale these out to the extreme of what the car is going to see. Most of these guys aren't out beating on these cars when it's 10 degrees outside, when the DA is negative 3,000, but you might get on a day where it's 50 degrees or 45 degrees and the DA is definitely below 1,000, and your engine load or your air mass being a GM, it's going to be higher than what you're going to see on a hot, humid day for sure. And that's going to be even at the same boost level with like a supercharged deal or even a turbocharged deal where the boost is going to be the same because of a wastegate spring or wastegate control. The air mass still will be higher with the colder air. So I don't know, thought I'd just talk about that for a second. Something I always pay attention to. Kind of keep in mind when I'm tuning cars what the weather is while I'm tuning them. And hey, it's a hot, humid day, so we're definitely not seeing what this car will definitely see. I guarantee you will be up on a cold day or a cold morning or cold evening, whatever, cold night out on the street. This thing is going to be at least a tenth, maybe 2 tenths higher. We could even be up almost to that 2.4 range. That's why I scaled the timing tables that high. So otherwise, that was a little tangent that I talk about. Otherwise, this is looking good. Our fueling is correcting a little strong. I'm going to adjust that maybe, but our timing is where it wants to be. That's where it's happy. That's where it's making the peak power. And yeah, everything's kosher on this calibration. So he's going to take this thing home tonight. He's kind of waiting on me right now, and he gets off around 4, and we're starting to push about 5 o'clock here on a Friday night. So he's probably antsy to get out in the street with it. So that's going to wrap it up on this one, guys. I appreciate you guys watching our channel. And again, keep checking back on our channel for more videos and our other social media for more stuff we're doing. The guys are going to the track, so there'll be more track footage on our social media. And appreciate you guys watching. Talk to you later.